October 1944. The Vosges Mountains, eastern France. Cold rain and a forest so thick the men called it a tunnel of trees. Somewhere ahead, 211 Texans of the 1st Battalion, 141st Infantry, are surrounded and cut off. The Germans call them trapped. The newspapers will call them the Lost Battalion. The men sent in to break through are Nisei, American-born sons of Japanese immigrants, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. Their motto is Hawaiian gambling slang, go for broke, bet everything. They climb into machine gun fire on a wooded ridge, and over 5 days they take roughly 800 casualties to bring out 211 men. It becomes the most decorated American unit for its size in the country's history. 21 Medals of Honor, nearly 10,000 Purple Hearts. And here's the thing the histories say plainly. While these sons bled for the flag in a French forest, many of their own fathers and mothers and sisters were behind barbed wire, in American camps, fenced and guarded by the same government those sons were dying for. They came home from the camps, the forest, the silence. And they raised their own sons in American living rooms over the next 40 years. They almost never spoke of any of it. What they gave instead was the rule. These are 25 rules, coded instructions, drilled into a generation of Sansei boys by fathers who endured the unendurable. We count backward from 25 to 1. Almost none of these fathers told their sons what the camps were. The rules are what they gave instead.
A word about who these men were, so the silence makes sense. They are Nisei, the second generation, born on American soil between roughly 1910 and 1925. Their parents, the Issei, had crossed an ocean and were barred by law from citizenship. The sons were citizens by birth. It did not matter. In February 1942, Executive Order 9066 swept some 120,000 people of Japanese descent off the West Coast and into 10 camps with names most Americans never learned. Manzanar, Tule Lake, Heart Mountain, Topaz, Minidoka, Gila River, Poston, Amache, Rower, Jerome. These men were imprisoned as young adults, in the years they should have been starting their lives. Some volunteered out of the camps into uniform. They came back to towns that did not want them, and started over with nothing. Then they became fathers. And being who they were, men shaped by gaman, the endurance that bears what cannot be changed, and enryo, the reserve that says little, they did not hand their sons the story. They handed them a sentence. One rule each. We begin at 25.
Number 25 is work twice as hard and say half as much. It comes from George Tadashi Tanaka of Fresno, California. Held at Manzanar through the war, then back to the same valley that had cheered his removal. Tanaka was a truck farmer, lettuce and tomatoes in straight rows, leasing land near the very packing houses that had wanted him gone. He said it like this: "They will always count your mistakes twice, so make half as many and let your rows do the talking." He never argued with a buyer. He outproduced every farm on the road, because the harvest was the only argument that could not be talked down. His son learned slowly that the work was the rebuttal, and that twice was no figure of speech, but a number his father had lived. Number 24 is Never Let Them See You Afraid. It comes from Henry Suzumu Hayashi of Los Angeles, his family behind wire at Heart Mountain while he volunteered into the 442nd and was wounded pulling out the Lost Battalion. Hayashi ran a fruit and vegetable stand in Little Tokyo. He had walked toward German machine guns to save men from a country whose own papers had called for his people's removal, and never described the Vosges. He said it like this: "Fear is a private thing. You feel it all you want, on the inside, where it belongs. Outside, you keep walking." What he passed down was not the story, but the posture, the flat voice, the still hands, the refusal to flinch. For years, the boy read it as coldness. At the funeral, he understood it was the most expensive thing his father owned.
Number 23 is the one who complains loudest, finishes last. It comes from Frank Kiyoshi Okada of Seattle, held at Minidoka, released to work, then drafted late and kept stateside. Okada lost a leased storefront and most of his customers in 1942, then rebuilt a dry cleaning business, pressing shirts 12 hours a day. He said it like this: "Anybody can complain, it costs nothing, and it's worth exactly that.
do the thing instead. He treated complaint as a leak, energy escaping, that should have gone into the work. There is a word for the burden you lay on others with your grievance, meiwaku. His son grew up in a house where you did not announce that a thing was hard, you did it. The boy mistook this for a lack of feeling. It was a budget.
Number 22 is take the hardest job before they can hand it to you. It comes from Masaru Watanabe of San Francisco, held at Topaz, then a Japanese language interrogator in the Military Intelligence Service, work classified for decades. Watanabe spent the war talking enemy soldiers out of caves in the Pacific. He came home unable to say a word about it and took a clerk's desk. He said it like this: "If a job has to be done and nobody wants it, that job is yours. Reach for it first, then it's a choice, not an insult." He took the worst shifts on purpose, because a job you volunteer for cannot be used to humiliate you. This is giri, duty, reverse engineered into control. The family that does the dirty work first, his son learned, is never handed it.
Number 21 is debts get paid back and then paid forward. It comes from James Akira Inoue of Honolulu, a Hawaiian Nisei, never incarcerated, wounded with the 100th Infantry Battalion at Monte Cassino. In Hawaii, there was no mass removal. The islands lived under martial law instead. Inoue served in the unit they called the Purple Heart Battalion and came home alive on borrowed life. He ran a small hotel. He said it like this: "Somebody carried you when you couldn't walk. You don't pay them back. You can't. You carry the next one." He kept the hotel as a way station, feeding broke veterans, fronting rent, asking nothing back. This is the unrepayable debt, and Okage-sama Day. I am what I am because of others. Gratitude, he taught his son, is not a balance you clear, but a direction you face. Number 20 is a man's name arrives before he does. It comes from Robert Noboru Nakamura of San Jose, held at Gila River, medically deferred from service by a punctured eardrum. Nakamura rebuilt a flower nursery from bare ground, chrysanthemums and carnations. The banks were not lending to men like him. His reputation was the only credit line he had. He said it like this: "Your name walks into the room before your face does. Spend your whole life making sure it says the right thing." He never shorted a buyer, never broke a handshake. The family name, he told his son, was a bank account everyone could see the balance of, and one bad act could overdraw 3 generations. Haji, a name to be returned unspoiled.
Number 19 is waste nothing. Someone paid for every grain. It comes from Joe Mitsuo Fujimoto of the Pajaro Valley, California, held at Poston, kept out of uniform as the sole support of a widowed mother. Fujimoto's family lost a strawberry operation and a lifetime of equipment in 1942, sold for pennies or simply taken. The man who came back saved bent nails, reused foil, ate the parts of the fish no one else would. He said it like this: "Motai nai, you do not waste. Behind every wasted thing is a person who went without it." To his son, it looked like depression thrift, but it was sharper. His father had watched a life's accumulation evaporate in a week and never trusted there would be more. Motai nai was the word he said most, carrying 1942 inside it without naming it.
Number 18 is don't be a nuisance, carry your own weight and a little more. It comes from Paul Shigeru Kobayashi of Sacramento, held at Amashe, then resettled to Denver rather than the coast. Kobayashi built a quiet pharmacy practice on being utterly reliable and nearly invisible, the man who was never a problem for anyone. Inconspicuousness was the strategy. He said it like this: "Meiwaku o kakeruna, never make trouble for other people. Whatever you need, find a way to need a little less of it." The worst thing you could be in his house was meiwaku, a burden on the group. Bound up with it was enyo, the reserve that holds back from imposing. The boy grew up self-erasing, never told that don't be a burden is what you teach a child when the family was treated as one. Number 17 is keep your head down and your standards up. It comes from William Tutomu Saito of Portland, held in the swampy Arkansas camps at Jerome and Rower, then resettled to Chicago. Saito learned in Arkansas that visibility was danger and competence the one protection that could not be taken. In Chicago, he built a television repair shop where the work was flawless and the man unseen.
He said it like this: "Don't make yourself a target, but never let quiet become an excuse for careless. Quiet hands, perfect work." It is a hard double act to be unnoticeable and excellent at once. This is Enryo and Gammon together, reserve that never lowers the standard. His son inherited both halves, the safety of that posture and the loneliness.
Number 16 is the group eats first, you eat what's left. It comes from Thomas Kenji Higa of Honolulu, an Okinawan Hawaii boy, never incarcerated, who served in the 442nd in Italy and France. Higa carried a double minority status, looked down on by some mainland Nikkei for being Okinawan, then thrown together with everyone in the regiment, where island boys and mainlanders bled the same. He ran a Simon place. He said it like this: "You're not the most important person at the table. Serve the others first, eat last, and you'll never be hungry for long." He ran the restaurant by the old plantation ethic: the community is fed before the owner. Putting yourself last, he taught his son, was not weakness but membership, the proof of belonging to a people.
Number 15 is learn everything they do, because someday it will be the only thing they cannot take. It comes from Edward Hiroshi Matsumoto of Sacramento, at Tule Lake before it became the segregation center, then moved to Topaz. Matsumoto lived as a man whose location was always someone else's decision. He concluded the only secure property was knowledge, resettled to Cleveland, and became an accountant, numbers being portable and unconfiscatable. He said it like this: "They can take your house, your land, your business, your name in the paper. They cannot take what's inside your head, so fill it." He drove his son toward education with a veracity the boy found suffocating. This is Gammon aimed at the future, Kodomo no Tameni, the lesson of a man who had watched everything else taken in one spring.
Number 14 is belong to your people, because the network is the only bank that never closed. It comes from Harry Takeshi Ito, family at Rower, his own war spent in the Military Intelligence Service in the Pacific. Ito resettled near the language school at Fort Snelling in Minnesota and opened a Japanese grocery that became a hub for a community rebuilding far from the coast. He had seen the Tanamoshi, the rotating credit pools the Issei used when no bank would touch them. He said it like this: "When the banks wouldn't lend to us, we lent to each other. Never forget who your people are. They are the only credit that never failed." The community was not sentiment, but infrastructure, he taught his son. The people who show up when the system will not. To a boy tempted to disappear into America, that network was the inheritance.
There is a sentence almost every Sansei child remembers asking, and almost none remember being answered. "Dad, where were you during the war?" The reply, if it came at all, was a place name with no story attached. Arizona, Wyoming, camp. Sometimes nothing. A man who set down his chopsticks and let the question dissolve until the boy understood he was not to ask again. These fathers came home from Manzanar and Heart Mountain, from the Vosges and the Pacific, and did the most disciplined thing of their disciplined lives. They did not speak of it. Not from forgetting, from gaman, the endurance that swallows what cannot be changed, and shikata ganai, it cannot be helped, the syllables a generation used to seal a wound so the next one would not carry the infection. The silence was not absence, it was a decision, repeated daily for 40 years. A man told by his own government that his face makes him an enemy learns that explaining yourself is a trap. The harder you protest your loyalty, the guiltier you look, so he stops explaining. He cannot say, "I was imprisoned without charge and I rebuilt anyway," so he says, "Waste nothing. Never let them see you afraid." The rule is the camp, compressed, folded so small it fits inside an instruction a child can follow without knowing what it weighs. The boy obeys it and inherits the history without the words. Everything in the second half of this list, the rice, the bath, the altar, the garden, is what that silence sounded like at home.
Number 12 is finish every grain of rice in the bowl. It comes from Richard Tadao Yoshida of Los Angeles, held at Manzanar, kept out of uniform as essential farm labor and family support. Yoshida built a post-war gardening route in West Los Angeles, the trade that fed thousands of Nisei men shut out of other work, and ran his table like a camp mess hall. He said it like this: every grain. Leave one in the bowl and you've insulted the man who grew it, and the year that grew you. The empty bowl was not manners, but something closer to theology, motainai and own at once. In the camps, food had been rationed and humbling. Rice from your own bowl afterward was near sacred. He made his son hold up the bowl to show it clean. The boy thought it strict. It was reverence.
Number 11 is the bath has an order, and the order is respect. It comes from Daniel Isamu Nakagawa of Seattle, family at Heart Mountain, his own war spent as a 442nd replacement in France. Nakagawa came back to a Seattle that had emptied his neighborhood and became a landscape contractor, reassembling the household rituals like a man relaying a foundation. He said it like this: "You wash before you enter the ofuro. Grandfather first, then me, then you. The water is shared, and so is the respect. Scrub clean outside the tub, then soak in shared water, eldest first. A daily map of who honors whom. This is Giri and Enryo." He never lectured about respect. He enforced the bath, and the lesson installed itself. Confusion order, surviving inside a tract house.
Number 10 is respect the old ones. They carried what you cannot imagine. It comes from Albert Noboru Shimizu of San Francisco, his Issei father seized by the FBI the night of Pearl Harbor, the rest of the family sent to Topaz. The family was split by the government itself. The father held in a separate Justice Department camp while Shimizu ran what was left of the household. He watched his parents lose a lifetime without complaint, then opened a gift shop. He said it like this: "You bow to the old ones first. They lost more than you will ever own, and they never once asked you to feel sorry for them." He demanded his son honor the grandparents before anyone. It was not custom, it was on and giri, an attempt to repay an unpayable debt to people who endured the unendurable in silence.
Number 9 is education is the one door they cannot lock. It comes from Stanley Osamu Takahashi, family at Minidoka, his own war spent as a linguist in the Military Intelligence Service. Takahashi worked a nursery by day and studied engineering by night, clawing into a profession that had been closed to his father's generation. He moved for the work, Chicago, then Salt Lake City. He said it like this: "I dug in the dirt so you could sit at a desk, study like the desk could be taken away, because once everything was." The family had been moved up a rung, he told his son, at a cost the boy could not see. This is Kodomo no Tameni, joined to Gamen. The boy resented the pressure until he grasped that for the sake of the children was the reason his father had endured the rest.
Number 8 is tend the garden, and it will tend you back. It comes from Roy Tetsuo Morita of the Central Valley, held at Gila River, medically deferred from service. In Gila River, incarcerees coaxed gardens out of the Arizona desert, ponds, rockwork, bonsai grown beside the barracks as acts of will. Morita brought that home and spent 50 years on trees that would not be hurried. He said it like this: "You cannot rush a tree, and you cannot rush a man. Patience is not waiting, it's the work you do while you wait." He taught his son with the pruning shears instead of speeches. A bonsai is decades of patience made visible. So is a man who rebuilt a life he never asked to lose. This is gaman and shikata ganai, endurance that is not passive, but slow cultivation, practiced every evening in near silence.
Number 7 is the year starts clean or it doesn't start. It comes from George Kazuo Ueda of Sacramento, held at Amache, then a 442nd man in Italy and the Po Valley. Ueda kept Oshogatsu, the Japanese New Year, like a sacred audit. Debts cleared, the house scrubbed, grudges set down, the family over mochi and ozoni. He ran a neighborhood tofu shop. He said it like this: "Before New Year, every debt is paid, every corner is clean, every quarrel is finished. You don't drag the old year's weight into the new one." After Amache, the ritual of starting clean was how he reclaimed control over time itself, the one thing the camps had stolen by deciding his years for him. This is Giri and Haji. A clean slate, he taught his son, is not given, but made. Number 6 is the photographs are the family. Save them first. It comes from Sam Yutaka Nishimura of Sacramento, a loyal family caught at Tule Lake through its conversion to the segregation center, held until 1946. Like many incarcerees, Nishimura's family had lost pre-war photographs in the chaos of removal, images of grandparents and a life that no longer existed. He resettled to Cleveland and opened a camera shop, almost an act of repair. He said it like this: "If the house ever burns, you carry out the people, then the photographs. Everything else can be bought again, those cannot." He treated the family album as the one irreplaceable object in the house. A photograph, he told his son, was not a thing but a person you could still reach. He knew what it was to lose the proof a family had lived.
Number 5 is the dead are still at the table. It comes from Walter Mamoru Kaneko of San Jose. Family at Hart Mountain. His own war spent in the 442nd. Survivor of the Lost Battalion rescue. Kaneko came home from the forests in France where so many friends did not, carrying their names. He tended a Buddhist's temple's grounds and kept the family butsudan, the home altar, with rice and incense. He said it like this: "Every morning you bow to the butsudan. The ones who went before are not gone. They're watching to see what kind of man you became." For him, the altar held not only ancestors, but the men who died beside him, and the morning bow was a report: "I am still living the way you would want." You are never the only one in the room, he taught his son. You owe the dead a life worth their deaths.
Number 4 is speak little, and when you do speak, mean all of it. It comes from Frank Tsuneo Hirano of Denver, a family that escaped the camps by geography, already living east of the exclusion zone, who took in relatives released from Amache. Hirano watched those relatives come out of camp hollowed and wordless. He ran a judo and kendo dojo and taught that control of the mouth was the first discipline. He said it like this: "Talk is cheap and it is also dangerous. Say less than you know. A word you didn't say can never be used against you." This is Enryo and Haji, verbal restraint, a guard against exposure. His son, growing up American and talkative, was taught a monastic economy of speech by a man who had watched a generation punished for who they were and decided the safest sentence was the one you swallowed.
Number 3 is a deal is a deal. Your word is the last thing you own. It comes from Mitsuo Sakamoto of Terminal Island, California, among the very first Nikkei forced out, given 48 hours, then sent to Manzanar. The Terminal Island fishermen were the first community erased, the village leveled while the families were still finding their footing in camp. Sakamoto came back to bulldozed ground and rebuilt as a fisherman, then ran a small fish market. He said it like this: "When everything else can be taken in 2 days, your word is the one thing no government can confiscate. Keep it like your life depends on it." This is Giri and Haji, the inviolable promise, honor as the last possession. Breaking your word was the gravest sin in his house because his father had been shown, brutally and young, that it might be all a man keeps.
Number 2 is when you commit everything. It comes from Benketsumi Oshiro, an Okinawan Hawaii boy, never incarcerated, who lived the 442nd's motto in Italy and France. Oshiro carried 2 layers of having to prove himself, an Okinawan among Japanese, a Japanese-American among a suspicious nation. He moved to San Jose for the work and ran a produce market, teaching judo on the side. He said it like this: "Go for broke. If you're going to do a thing, put everything on it. Hold nothing back, leave nothing in reserve. Half in is just a slower way to lose." This is Ganbaru, the will that never quits, married to the regiment's creed. The worst way to do anything, he told his son, was halfway. The boy never knew the phrase was Hawaiian gambling slang, turned into a war cry by men who bet everything anyway.
Number 1 is make something beautiful out of whatever they give you. It comes from Charles Yoshio Yamamoto of Hood River, Oregon. His parents behind wire at Hart Mountain, himself a 442nd man in France with a Purple Heart, and his name among those his own town tried to erase. In November 1944, while Yamamoto was overseas,
The American Legion post in Hood River blacked out 16 Nisei servicemen's names from the county honor roll. His was one of them. His country imprisoned his parents. His town struck out his service. He came home anyway, reclaimed the orchard, and said almost nothing for 40 years. He said it like this: "Make something beautiful out of whatever they give you, even if all they give you is scrap, especially then." The boy heard that rule his whole life and never understood its weight until the funeral. After the burial, clearing out his father's bedroom, the son finds at the back of the closet shelf a small cigar box, soft at the corners from handling. Inside, wrapped in a square of his late mother's futoshiki cloth, is a tiny carved bird, no bigger than a thumb. The body is whittled from a scrap of pale barrack lumber, sanded smooth by a thumb passing over it for decades. The legs are 2 bent lengths of rusted window screen wire. The wings are painted in colors long faded, a wash of blue, a hint of red at the breast. On the underside, in pencil gone silver with age, 2 words and a number in his father's hand: Heart Mountain, 1943. He has never seen it. His father never showed it, never mentioned it. And then he understands. The rule was not a metaphor. At 20 years old, behind barbed wire in the Wyoming wind, with nothing but mess hall lumber and screen wire, his father had made a bird, a thing that could fly, made by a man who could not leave. He carried it through France, through 40 years of orchard work in silence, and never explained it, because the bird was the explanation. The son holds the whole episode in his palm: the camp, the war, the silence, and a wordless act of beauty against despair, handed down without a word, the art of gamen. He had been holding the rule his entire life, and only now could read it.
The Nisei are nearly gone now. The men who carried the camps in silence are passing out of living memory, and the sons who inherited the rules are old men themselves. It took the country 40 years to say the word. In 1988, the Civil Liberties Act acknowledged what had been done, and beginning in 1990, the letters went out, an apology signed by the president, and $20,000 to each survivor still living to receive it. The internment, the letter said, had been carried out without adequate security reasons. We now have a clearer view of these events. Most of the fathers in this episode said about it what they had always said about everything: almost nothing. Because the apology was never the point, and neither, in the end, was the war. What the father gave his son was never the story of the camp. It was the way to endure it: the empty rice bowl, the still hands, the word kept, the bird carved from scrap. The rules outlived the camps, the discipline outlived the silence, and the silence, it turns out, was the loudest thing these men ever said. So we leave it with you. Which camp did your family pass through? Manzanar, Topaz, Heart Mountain, or one whose name you are only now learning? And which rule did your father or his father drill into you without ever telling you why? Leave it in the comments. Some of these men never heard the thanks. Maybe we can still say it for them.